For my birthday, I took my family out to dinner, my treat. After the cake, they played a surprise slideshow of our best memories. I wasn't in a single photo. I just smiled, went to the bathroom, and quietly sent one email. 3 months later, they were calling nonstop, begging me to undo what I had done. I don't know what I expected, really. Maybe just a normal dinner. One night where I didn't feel like I was floating on the edge of my own family. I wasn't looking for a grand gesture or heartfelt speeches. Just acknowledgement. So yeah, I paid. Booked the restaurant. Picked one with enough space, cloth napkins, soft lighting. Something that looked more thoughtful than extravagant. My mom liked the wine list. That was enough. Garrett RSVP'd the day before. Ryan texted, "Can I bring someone?" and then showed up alone. My dad made a joke about how I was finally splurging on the family. Like I hadn't covered holiday flights and hotel rooms more times than I could count. But I smiled. That was always the rule. Smile, laugh at the right moments, take up as little space as possible. Dinner itself was what you'd expect. Ryan retold old stories like they were his, adding punchlines that didn't happen. Garrett gave a 10-minute monologue about some networking event where a guy in a vest called him visionary. My parents nodded, smiling like they were watching their favorite rerun. I poured the wine, passed the bread, said nothing. Then came dessert, a candle and a slice of cheesecake, a half-hearted rendition of Happy Birthday. I clapped politely along with them. And then Ryan grinned and said, "We made you something." Garrett pulled out his laptop and connected it to the projector the restaurant had set up in the private room. Just a little surprise. Family memories and stuff. Just for fun, my mom added. You'll love it. The screen lit up. It started with grainy footage of our backyard, Garrett's 8th birthday. Ryan knocking over a stack of paper cups. Mom laughing. My dad holding the camera sideways. Then came the photos. Vacations. School plays. Christmas mornings. Random snapshots of them as toddlers in the bath, teenagers at parties, adults clinking glasses in bars. Minute after minute, the slideshow rolled. Music played softly beneath it. Ed Sheeran, of course. I watched. Kept my face neutral. Trained. Because I wasn't in any of them. Not one. Not a single frame. It wasn't like I was shoved to the side or awkwardly cropped. I just wasn't there. No Halloween costumes. No high school grad photos. No Thanksgiving group shots. No blurry candids from family weddings. Just absence. As if I'd never been in the room. Never existed at all. They laughed at an old video of Ryan falling into a pool. Garrett flexing in front of a mirror. A dog we had for 6 months. Still no one noticed. Then the final slide faded in. A quote in pale cursive over a beach sunset. Family is everything. They clapped. My mom actually wiped away a tear. Ryan leaned back, pleased. What do you think? Garrett said. Pretty great, right? I smiled. Yeah, that was really something. And I stood up. Smooth. Calm. Excuse me a sec. No one stopped me. I walked down the hall toward the restroom, past the coat check, past the noise, into a quiet pocket of air. Locked the door behind me. Then I took out my phone. Opened my email. The draft was already sitting there. Written that morning. Just in case. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I was hesitating. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen once I hit send. I could already picture their faces. The slow unraveling. The dawning realization. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. But soon. When they finally understood what I'd done. And by then, it would be too late. I tapped my finger against the screen. One tap. Message sent. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Looked in the mirror. Straightened my collar. Walked back to the table. Garrett was halfway through a story about a business lunch that could change everything. Ryan was showing my mom a meme on his phone. My dad was refilling his wine. My chair was still warm. No one asked where I'd gone. So I sat. Picked up my fork. And smiled. Because they had no idea what I'd just done. But they would. Soon. I used to tell myself it wasn't on purpose. The forgetting, I mean. The missing seat in the car. The unsigned permission slip. The teacher conference no one showed up to. The way my name got left off the group chat, the invitation, the family update emails. I used to think maybe it was just an accident. That being left out wasn't intentional. That I was quiet, and quiet people get overlooked. But you can only excuse being invisible for so long before you realize. It's not an accident. It's a decision. From the beginning, I was the filler child. The one between the photo-worthy firstborn and the charming baby. Garrett got the big reactions, the camcorder flashes, the comparisons to Dad. Ryan got the warmth, the laughter, the ease. I got quiet nods, polite smiles, sometimes not even that. I had a stutter back then. Not all the time, mostly when I was nervous or had to speak in front of people, which, in a family like mine, was most of the time. They'd tease me for it, gently at first, then louder, then in front of guests. Use your words, Elliot. Spit it out already. Garrett would mimic me at the dinner table, dragging out a syllable until Ryan fell over laughing. My parents would shush them, sure, but not in the way that meant anything. It was more like background noise, an attempt at looking like they cared without actually caring. I learned to speak less. It made things easier. I remember birthdays where I didn't blow out the candles. Not because I didn't want to, but because Ryan had already done it for me. I remember a 5th grade talent show where I wrote and performed a song. No one came. I remember one Christmas where Garrett got a guitar, Ryan got a new phone, and I got a second-hand sweater still smelling like cologne. Garrett played varsity everything. Ryan was class clown. I was the kid who tutored other kids in math. The one who stayed behind after field trips to help the teacher carry boxes. At family gatherings, my name was always said last. This is Garrett, he's our oldest. Star athlete. And this is Ryan, our little comedian. And that's Elliot. He's good with numbers. I stopped inviting people over. Stopped sharing what I was working on. Stopped expecting praise. By the time I was in college, I had trained myself out of the stutter. No speech coach. No therapy. Just the quiet pressure of knowing that if I didn't fix myself, no one would do it for me. I built my first business out of my dorm. Shipped the first batch of orders using borrowed packing tape. Answered customer service calls at 3 a.m. because I couldn't afford help yet. No one asked how I was doing. Garrett was launching his own company by then, More Tech Industries. My parents threw him a backyard launch party with banners and finger food. I found out from a photo Ryan posted. I didn't bring it up. Garrett's business struggled out the gate. Bad suppliers, missed deadlines, too much flash, not enough structure. He wasn't built for operations. He was built for presentations. And still, everyone acted like he was on the edge of greatness. It was around that time my company started doing real numbers. I'd built something lean and scalable, and I was just beginning to get traction. I'd also built a supply chain that could absorb more volume. So I made a decision. I approached Garrett. Told him I could route some of our materials through his company. It wouldn't be efficient, it'd actually cost us more, but I'd write it off as loyalty. He was grateful. For about 5 minutes. Then he started treating it like a favor he was doing me. I'll keep the price stable for you, don't worry. You're lucky I had bandwidth, bro. I smiled. Said thank you. That was 2 years ago. Since then, More Tech had become quietly dependent on those contracts. My team flagged it early. Asked why we were still buying from them. I told them to keep it going. Said it was a relationship thing. They didn't press. The truth was, I knew the contract was the only reason Garrett's company was staying afloat. He didn't know that. My parents didn't know that. Ryan certainly didn't. And yet, even with me underwriting their stability, they still saw me as the kid in the corner. The one with the stutter. The one who sat alone at the kitchen table doing homework while everyone else played Mario Kart. They still introduced me as our other son. At that dinner, my birthday dinner, I looked around the table and saw the same dynamic playing out all over again. Garrett talking like he was the one running empires. Ryan joking like I was the audience. And the slideshow. God, the damn slideshow. All those years of being forgotten, condensed into 10 minutes of curated erasure. They didn't forget me. They never saw me to begin with. And that email I sent from the bathroom? It was just the beginning. The strange thing was, nothing looked different right after I sent the email. I walked back to the table. Garrett was still talking like nothing had shifted. Something about a guy he met at a business retreat who just knew they were on the brink of exploding into new markets. Ryan was laughing at a meme on his phone. My mom was taking a blurry photo of her wine glass. And me? I just sat down and listened. Let them keep performing like the lights hadn't already gone out backstage. The next morning, I got up early, went for a run, and made myself eggs. It felt normal. But underneath that quiet was something heavy and final. The kind of final you don't come back from. A few days passed. Nothing. Then Garrett called. I didn't answer. He didn't leave a message. The next day, Ryan texted me a joke about how I ghosted everyone after getting older. I didn't respond to that either. Then came the voicemail from my mother. Elliot, sweetheart. I don't know what's going on between you and your brother, but it sounds like there's been a big misunderstanding. He's really upset. Maybe you could just talk to him. A misunderstanding. That's what they always called it when something hurt. A misunderstanding. Not cruelty. Not neglect. Just a mix-up, like the time they left me at a rest stop on a road trip when I was 9. Garrett joked about it for years. Ryan called it my solo vacation. My parents laughed. I remember sitting on the curb alone, not crying, just waiting, wondering if they'd noticed yet. That was the thing about being the one they overlooked. You learn not to cause trouble. You learn to swallow hurt before anyone notices it exists. So I did what I always did. I stayed quiet. But while I was silent, everything else started to move. I didn't know the details, not at first. But I knew Garrett. I knew how much he'd built his identity around the illusion of success, how he needed people to believe his company was thriving. I also knew how much my support had been the scaffolding holding up the whole structure. When that scaffolding disappeared, the cracks weren't visible immediately. But they were there. Ryan started calling more often. At first it was casual, checking in, sending me funny updates about Garrett's new marketing campaign. But underneath the jokes was a kind of nervousness I hadn't heard before. Then Garrett called again. This time he left a message. Hey, listen. I think there's been some wires crossed. I know the contract expired, but I figured we'd just renew it. Can you give me a call? His voice was trying to stay calm, but the pitch was off. A little too tight. A little too rehearsed. Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I went to the gym. I had lunch. I took my time, because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't on the outside hoping for a moment. I was the moment, and they didn't know that yet. It was about a week later when my dad called. Elliot, I don't know what's going on, but Garrett says you're pulling some kind of move to hurt him. That doesn't sound like you. Is everything okay? He sounded tired. Not angry, confused. As if it truly hadn't occurred to him that I had a line, and that they'd long since crossed it. I didn't answer. A few days after that, a mutual friend forwarded me a message. Garrett had apparently reached out to one of my vendors, trying to offer them a better deal. The friend wanted to know if this was some kind of coordinated partnership. I told him it wasn't. The truth was, Garrett was grasping. And every time he did, he exposed how much he'd depended on me without even realizing it. The contract hadn't just been a line item on a spreadsheet. It had been the line. The one between his company being something he could boast about, and something that was actually working. And now it wasn't. But here's the part that stung more than anything he ever said out loud. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what had upset me. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't acknowledge the slideshow, or the years of being overlooked. He never asked what was in the email. So I'll tell you, it was short, cold, professional. I terminated the supply contract between my company and Garrett's, effective immediately. No explanation. No drama. Just a clean break from something I should have walked away from years ago. He only called when the fallout started, when the numbers dipped, when the cash flow choked. I wasn't a brother to him. I was a backup plan. And when the backup plan failed, the family did what they always did. They blamed me. It started subtly. My aunt called and said she'd heard I was going through a tough time. My uncle texted, "If you ever want to talk, we're here." Then someone I barely knew, one of Garrett's old classmates, messaged me on LinkedIn with a fake-sounding, "Hope you're okay." They were building a narrative. That I was spiraling. That I was unstable. That I'd sabotaged Garrett out of bitterness. It wasn't just business. It was personal. And that's when I realized I hadn't sent a business email that night. I had drawn a line in the sand. Quietly. Cleanly. And they had chosen the wrong side. One afternoon, Ryan called 3 times in a row. When I didn't answer, he texted, "Seriously? You're going to burn the whole family down over a slideshow?" And I stared at that text for a long time. Because the truth is, yes, I would. Not because of one slideshow, but because of every moment like it. Every time they laughed at my stutter. Every birthday I was forgotten. Every time I was introduced as the quiet one, while Garrett and Ryan got applause for breathing. I wasn't burning the family down. I was just walking away and letting them feel the cold without me. I never raised my voice. I never sent a warning. I just stopped holding the weight they'd been piling on me for years. And once it was gone, everything started to collapse. Quietly. Perfectly. Exactly the way it needed to. The funny thing about consequences is that they rarely come all at once. They trickle in, first as whispers, then ripples, then waves. After my mom's voicemail, there was silence for a week. No texts, no missed calls, no awkward thinking of you forwards from relatives trying to broker peace. Just quiet. I thought that might be it. That they'd sit in the silence long enough to understand it wasn't about revenge. That I wasn't lashing out, I'd just stopped giving. Stopped absorbing. Stopped shrinking myself to make space for them. But people like Garrett don't sit quietly for long. When the panic really set in, they didn't come to me. They went to everyone else. It started with our Uncle Mike. A short, guilt-laced email. Heard things are tense. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. Garrett says you're going through something. Then a call from a friend of mine who used to work in my company's legal department. Hey man, weird question. Did you actually threaten Garrett's team? He's telling people you sent some kind of warning. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about fixing anything. This was about painting me as the problem before anyone looked close enough to see the truth. Garrett had started telling anyone who would listen that I'd sabotaged his company out of jealousy, that I'd pulled the contract to punish him for being more successful, that I was emotionally unstable. And Ryan didn't start the lies, but he was quick to echo them. I imagine he thought he was being loyal. Or maybe he just didn't want to admit how much money he'd lost. The real kicker? My parents believed it. Or maybe they just found it easier to believe. Because if I was the villain, then none of them had to answer for how they'd treated me. I was walking home one evening when a neighbor I hadn't seen in years stopped me. Hey, Elliot, I heard about the family thing. I hope you're okay. Your mom said you'd been struggling. Struggling. That word hit like a slap. Not because it was untrue. Everyone struggles, but because it was being weaponized. Twisted into a story where I was the unstable one. The angry one. The one who had blown everything up. I didn't defend myself. Just nodded, smiled, walked on. But something shifted in me after that. Because they weren't just lying. They were trying to erase me again. The same way they had in that slideshow. The same way they always had. Only this time, I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I didn't call them out publicly. I didn't post anything dramatic. I didn't hold a press conference. But I stopped being careful. When a mutual contact asked why my company dropped more tech, I told the truth. Not gossip. Not bitterness. Just the truth. We had a contract that wasn't beneficial to us anymore. It was a loyalty decision, not a business one. Loyalty only works when it's mutual. I said it calmly, cleanly, and I left it at that. The truth has a way of leaking. The lies started crumbling when one of Garrett's former employees, someone I'd never met, posted on LinkedIn. Said he had seen the numbers. Said more tech had been propped up by a single contract, and everyone knew it. Said it wasn't Elliot who ruined the company. It was ego. From there, it spread. Family friends stopped returning Garrett's calls. Investors backed out. One of Ryan's old college buddies wrote him a long email that ended with, "You can't build your house on someone else's foundation and then act surprised when it sinks." My parents didn't say anything for a while. Then I got a letter. A real, physical letter. My dad's handwriting. He asked if we could meet. Said things had gotten messy. Said he wanted to clear the air. I read it twice. And then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Because even then, even in their lowest moment, it wasn't an apology. It was damage control. The thing about being the forgotten child is that you grow up learning to live without validation. And once you stop needing it, it becomes very clear how many people only loved the version of you that needed saving. Or staying quiet. The final fallout came in pieces. Ryan sold his car. Garrett moved back in with my parents. The family investment pool turned out to be a tangled mess of debts and overpromises. A few extended relatives had invested too, hoping Garrett's company would be their retirement ticket. They were livid. People started asking questions. Why didn't Elliot help? What did he mean by loyalty only works when it's mutual? And eventually, the answer emerged on its own. Someone found out about the slideshow. It was a cousin, Ashley, who had been at the dinner. She hadn't noticed at the time, but months later she remembered and asked to see it again. Garrett sent it to her proudly. Still too arrogant to realize what he'd done. Ashley watched it. Then she called me. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize what they'd done. Until I watched it again and realized you weren't in it. At all." She paused. "And now they want to act like you're the one who cut them out." That moment mattered more than anything else. Because it proved I wasn't crazy. That the erasure was real. That someone else saw it. Named it. I thanked her, genuinely, and I let the rest unfold on its own. I never issued a statement, never made a scene, but word got around. The business collapsed. The truth spread. The lies fell apart. And the last time my phone rang with my mom's name on the screen, I didn't answer. Because by then, I had nothing left to say. They'd spent years pretending I wasn't part of the story. And now, they were living in one-eyed written without them. That's how it ended. Not with a fight. Not with closure. Just a long, echoing silence where their voices used to be. Sometimes I wonder if they ever replay the slideshow. If they ever see the gap where I should have been, and finally understand what that silence cost them. But I don't need to know. I've already moved on. Do you think I went too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. If you want more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe.